Hey everyone, welcome back to Empowered and Out, the podcast where we focus on building careers that actually feel aligned, confident, and sustainable. I'm your host, Jonathan. Most people call me Jon, aka Coach Jon, career coach and advocate for showing up fully at work. And this season, we're talking about visibility and authenticity, what it really takes to unmask and lead without leaving parts of yourself behind. And this year, we're doing things differently. We're elevating, we're expanding, we're prospering together. Through real conversations and coaching centered insights, my goal is to help you reconnect with your confidence, trust yourself more, and start making career choices that support not just your success, but your well being too. And if you're listening thinking, okay, I'm ready for support with this, you can book a discovery call with me. The link is in the show notes. So take a breath, settle in, and let's get into today's conversation. So I've been excited for this one because my guest, Ryan McCarthy, lives at the intersection of radical authenticity and high stakes leadership. And he talks about it in a way that feels real, strategic, and a little magical in the best way. He's described his life as a constant process of translation, coming out at 14, immersing himself in non American cultures, spending years in Paris, earning his master's, and more recently, making a major career pivot into leading some of the most high pressure, high impact AI training programs in the world. And through all of it, his operating system has been this idea that authenticity isn't just being yourself, it's choosing how you channel yourself. Today, we're digging into visibility as strategy, narrative leadership, the art of expressing what the majority labels uncouth, and what reinvention looks like after disruption, especially inside systems that were never built with us in mind. Ryan, welcome to Empowered and Out.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
this season, so great to have you here. This season, we are doing something unique and new. Maybe not unique, but I think this is something that we all kind of need. And not just for the guests, but also for those who are listening and watching. I encourage you to do this as well. I have what I'm calling an energy check in. So, on a scale from 1 to 10, how is your energy today and what's contributing to that number?
I would say my energy right now is around a 7, but that's mostly because of just being on this show right now. My energy earlier today was actually probably more like a 4 or 5 when I started today. Mostly that's because I spent the last couple of days feeling a little bit under the weather and dealing with a sticky situation with my jobs, actually. I just actually put in a letter of resignation today officially. And the other work that I was supposed to have started a week ago has been on pause. So that's not been the greatest of circumstances, but you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is, and sorry to hear about that. That is definitely not fun and makes life all the more challenging. But
At the same time, though, like I can't complain that much because it does give me the opportunity to work on the projects that I have going on my personal side of things. I've got a lot of exciting stuff in that realm. So, like, had all day now to work on that.
well, that's great. Awesome. Well, let's talk. Let's just get started. So let's talk about radical authenticity as a foundational operative. So when you say that, I hear both power and discipline. So what does radical authenticity actually look like in practice, especially on the days it's inconvenient?
So, I think that radical authenticity is really just about being yourself unapologetically all the time. There is never a moment that I am not being radically authentic because I've built in such a way that I've never been able to like pretend to be something that I'm not. I don't have it in me for some reason to do that. Like I came out when I was 14 because not because like I sort of chose to it was like it was a compulsion. And the circumstances under which I came out were like I was at ski club, somebody was making fun of me, and he said, "You like men." And I just turned around and I said, "You know what, Steve? I do." And I screamed it in the middle of the freaking ski club lodge. Rachel Cortese was running off to the bathroom crying because she had a crush on me forever. But then, like, it spread obviously around school from there. But at no point was I ever sort of like, did I ever try to cover it up once it was sort of like out there? I was happy at that point just to be able to be my true authentic self. It was a relief after, the first few days, which were hard, but for the most part, it turned out to be a relief. And I have ever since made sure that, like, if people don't realize that I'm gay pretty quickly, like, I tell them, like, pretty upfront. Generally, most people figure it out pretty quick, but I usually slip it into conversation too. It's not like I, just come out like in a really blunt way and like off the cuff and just am like, I'm a homo. Like it usually just like I sort of thread it into some sort of conversation, literally like hint at it or something, and then wait for somebody to address it. um, and I find that that works very well. And I would say that I do the same thing in my everyday life in a lot of different ways. In like the way that I bring up my emotional status in like the workplace is probably something that I'm going to do subtly. I'm not going to necessarily blurt out that like I hate everything today. Like sometimes I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes like, it depends on like the team's vibe that day. Sometimes we're all like, we absolutely hate our lives today, but we're gonna suck it up and do it. But other times, I make sure though that like generally people know how I'm feeling at any particular time. I think that it's very important to express yourself, to express your emotions. Bottling things up is just a recipe for explosion. At least for me, for sure, it's very much a recipe for explosion. I can't really hide my emotions very long before that bottle erupts. And so it's been important throughout my life to have the sort of safety, the feeling of safety to be able to express how I'm feeling about something. I worked actually for 10 years in the video game industry as a narrative designer, quest designer, creative writer. And especially in my first like role when I lived in Paris, my first job in the video game industry was a small studio called Ublada that was based in Paris. And my project manager, while we were close outside of work, when we were at work, she was a project manager who was a woman in a very male dominated, like, industry, and so I think that she really took it upon herself to be kind of mean sometimes. She was a badass, but, like, sometimes that went a little bit too far, and she was straight up mean. She made me cry several times, she made our artist cry several times, and our artist, by the way, was a lesbian from China who was not the type that would normally like seem like a crier. So like it was pretty aggressive sometimes. And like that was sort of a like eye-opening like scenario for me. I kind of forgot my train of thought here. Speaking of radical authenticity, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. I forgot why I was on the topic, why I was talking about my project manager.
It is all good. Well, maybe this will, just to follow up. So, what in your mind is the difference between authenticity, being authentic, and oversharing?
So it's about context, I think. It really boils down to like what in this moment is appropriate and what is, just going to be kind of seem random or awkward or like it's important to be able to pick up on social cues and to know your audience at all times. Like, no matter what you're kind of doing, if you're putting anything out there in the world, you kind of got to know the audience that's absorbing it. And it's important to sort of tailor the way that you express that self in different environments. And That's something that I've really been able to like, my writing has been able to inform that in a lot of ways, and I've been really lucky in that regard because I am used to having to write for a target audience that is not the normal target audience that I would write for. I've mostly been in mobile gaming, and the target audience is typically 30 to 55-year-old American stay-at-home moms. It's a very interesting sort of demographic to write for, but those are the majority of like big spenders in mobile gaming are actually the American stay-at-home moms. And so that's who we
Hmm.
usually like are writing for. And that's why probably a lot of people are like, mobile gaming's so bad. It's so terrible. It's like, no, it's not. It's actually just like, it's just not your like cup of tea, but it is the cup of tea of many a stay-at-home mother.
That's really funny. I didn't know that,
Mhm.
but you are correct. I think that you have to know your audience between the
Yeah.
authenticity and oversharing, and I kind of feel it sometimes, and I just said this on a recent interview that I had as well, was that you need to know your audience, but how much are you really wanting to share? Just, I mean, even on social media, but in the workplace as well.
Mhm.
I understand being out and wanting to share everything you want to share and being authentic, but it's also the workplace. And
Mhm.
you were hired for a job to do a job. Do you necessarily need to be screaming unicorns and rainbows all day long? Probably not. Now, I'm not saying you have to mask yourself, but I
Mhm.
think, yeah, knowing the audience, knowing where you are, I think
Yeah,
makes a huge difference because I think everyone wants to be their themselves, and even probably your boss's bosses want you to be in a way yourself, but at the end of the day there is a job to be done.
absolutely.
And I feel that's where I'm hearing and seeing more and more, especially the one of the younger generations, especially Gen Z, is really wanting just to be out and proud and everything, and that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that, but they also need to get a little bit better on reading the room and reading who they're wanting to be out and proud around.
I think that's a really important skill to have in general, to be able to read a room and to be able to like perceive how somebody might respond to what you're going to put out there. Like an
Yeah.
example that I have that is a little bit like removed from the workplace but still pretty relevant is I when I was in I did a study abroad my junior year of undergrad in Vichy, France, which is it's actually the former Nazi capital of France. It
Oh,
was where the Nazis established as their capital when they took over France. So it's got a really interesting history, and it is like this small town that is in it's like the navel of France, they call it. And so it's right like where the belly button would be of France.
okay.
And it's a pretty conservative area. And my I stayed with a host family. I attended a school called Cavillon that is just for learning French for foreigners. That's the only reason why it exists. And my host family, they were amazing. They were so fun and funny, and they would swear sometimes, like off the cuff, and like they were not they were not buttoned up like traditional people, but I, for some reason, just got the impression that like, I should keep my sexuality sort of out of the conversation. I never, you know, denied anything. I just never got brought up until one of the very last days that I was there. And I was talking to my
Mm,
host mother, and somehow we got on the subject of gay rights. This was just before, like, gay marriage was just starting to like kind of be talked about in France, and it was 2013 while I was there that gay marriage was legalized. And so I admitted that I was gay in that moment, and she was completely accepting of that. But she brought up one little thing, which was that she doesn't support gay men having a child, like raising a child. And so that was a really interesting moment for me where like I wasn't really used to facing any adversity as far as my sexuality goes. And that was one of the first experiences where I was like, okay, well, so I gave her my sort of thoughts on that, and we had a great conversation about it. And I think she walked away seeing things from a different perspective, which was really wonderful. But like that was where I sort of had that hesitation. I had picked up on the fact that they probably weren't very used to being in the presence of homosexuals, and they welcome hundreds of students into their home from all over the world, but like nationality is very different than sexuality. And
Oh, for sure.
so
Yeah.
recognizing that I think like was a really pertinent example that I have of like when I had sort of considered maybe this isn't the right place to announce, my sexuality.
Well, since you read question two that I had for you, not that you did, listeners and viewers, Ryan doesn't have the questions, but it is really funny because my next question was, and we kind of led right into it, and I didn't even see the question, but it was talking about visibility and how to know when to say, when to be visible and when to not, and how much and at what cost. And I mean, you answered that really kind of perfectly good because it's an interesting point that she made, which is I feel that even when I was younger, it was acceptable for two lesbians to have a child
Mm,
and to raise a child or children. But
mhm,
yeah, for some odd reason, oh no, two gay men, you can't do that. And I never understood it because I now in my 50s, I know people who have raised children
mhm.
and they're two men and their children are great. And it's funny that some people I feel just have this notion that I guess you could say two moms would be better than two dads. I don't know. I think it's very naive in the thinking, but
It's very
yeah,
sexist too because it's the idea that women are more nurturing, and I think that that's really where it boils down to. But just to throw this out there, my mom was, when I was growing up, the supervisor of the Department of Social Services. And she did a lot of fostering and adoptions. And she was, even before I came out, very big on seeing gay couples foster. She was a huge proponent of that and one of the first people in New York State to get gays to foster, and that still didn't make it that much easier for her when I came out, but
that's funny. So let's talk about translation as a life skill. So you've said you've had to translate yourself across cultures, environments, and power structures. What have you learned about identity when you're constantly translating who you are to be understood?
it's that's a really big question. Identity for me is really something that is it's so deep. It's really like I can get really intellectual here, but like sort of the way that I see identity is that like it's a mask no matter what. Humans are sort of born as blank slates, and we develop through our experiences and what we endure and our traumas and everything, like a personality. And that personality is always a mask. It's always something that you are putting on top of, your psyche, your unconscious, whatever it is. And so like this was a very recent thought that was actually brought to my attention by AI. And I was like, oh my God, this is so true. Like, that's kind of weird and I don't like it. It made me uncomfortable. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, it's true. We really are just all like wearing masks. And so, like, I think that in that respect, you can very easily like change your mask at any given time. And like, obviously, you don't want to just like abruptly be like, all of a sudden today I'm gonna be like Cecil, and that's my new personality. That's you know, that's gonna look like something that you don't want it to look like necessarily. However, Like, I've learned through I've sort of, like, reinvented myself several times. I actually even have a tendency, admittedly, to, like, run away when things get tough. Like, if, I have friendships that are falling through, like, my sort of modus operandi is, like, go move across the country and reinvent yourself, and escape it all. That's sort of, like, how I operate, and so I've learned how to, take those experiences and then learn from them and alter the way that I interact with the world based on, like, especially the negative stuff. You know, adversity really, like, teaches. I like to say that I see the glass half empty and half full, but I choose to look at it as half full most of the time, as long as it makes sense to look at it as half full, because sometimes it's better to look at it half empty. It's going to serve you better. And if you look at it half full, it's just delusional. And I think it's important to recognize that and be able to apply that sort of positivity, cautious positivity, to your, like, even the negative stuff that you go through. And that really serves to reinforce, I find, like, positive traits in yourself that then you can carry on into different reinventions of yourself. And I think that the whole process of sort of living is just like a translation, like a process of translation and a process of, like, learning how to adapt to different scenarios and to different people, and what to, even just what to avoid. Because I'm very avoidant of people these days.
All right. So to go kind of along with that, I guess should say to expand on that. So obviously you've immersed yourself in other cultures. Did immersing yourself in other cultures make it easier or harder to come back into American corporate norms?
It definitely made it harder at first. Like, when I left France, I actually left France unexpectedly. I was supposed to be hired. I got a long-term contract, which is, there's a meme in France that says, like, they're comparable to a unicorn because they're so rare, because France has a very, very, like, strict system where, like, firing somebody that has a long-term contract is very hard. So most companies just do not wanna risk it. So French, like, people even up into their 30s end up in this perpetual state of working internships and working short-term contracts, which is
Hmm.
a national, like, issue. But I was lucky enough to get a CDI and, a long-term contract. And then the secretary at the company that I worked for was just not the most intelligent of individuals. And I sort of let her do everything, and I shouldn't have. And she did not see that I was supposed to go hand my contract in to the French immigration authorities within 2 weeks of signing the contract. Instead, we waited 3 months and compiled
Oh,
all of the documentation, and I went to immigration, and they took one look at my contract and were like, "No, c'est impossible." And, that was the end of that. I had to go
wow.
home. So, when I came back, I was, like, mortified. I mean, it was a very challenging time for me because I didn't wanna be back in the United States. I had planned, like, sort of my entire life around moving away because I always saw this country as being somewhat problematic in ways that were, like, counter to what like, how I wanted to live my life. I saw it as being a very, like, stringent work culture, sort of corporate environment. Like, sort of America runs on corporations, and France very much does not. France is very much about, like a work-life balance. They have lots of problems too, don't get me wrong. There was a part of me that was a little happy to come home because I was also, like, somewhat depressed in Paris, surprisingly. The French are very blasé, and I adapt to people. Whatever I'm surrounded with, I sort of take on and become very quickly without even realizing it, and the French are kind of depressing, I'm not gonna lie. At least the Parisians, I should say. The Parisians are. can be a little bit depressing in the workflow every day. But so can the American work culture be very depressing. And when I first came back, I struggled a lot to find a job because I had put all of my eggs in the French basket, and all of my skills were valuable in the French market and not in American market. And so I struggled really hard. I ended up having to get a job as a bank teller. And I worked that job for 2.5 years, and I was good at it, but I didn't like it. And they were trying to get me to like become an MRO, and I did not want to do that. And I just got a lucky break that like the Chinese lesbian artist that I worked with, who I became very close with, became a project manager for a startup company. And she contacted me and was like, "Do you want to
Hmm,
write for us?" And I then
nice.
did that for 7 more years. And that was like a life changing moment for me, but that was very lucky. And it is like, I find very true the more people you know, the better, your prospects are probably going to be in landing the job that you actually want. Because right now, like the job market is so like such a miserable experience. So it's rough
Yeah.
out there. And this is the first time that I have had to look for a job, like through the actual job market. Everything that I've previously gotten has sort of landed in my lap. And this is the first time that I'm really like pushing up against that need to like get into corporate sort of environments that like I'm finding it hard to avoid. Even like I applied for Reddit, and even Reddit is now like a corporate company. They held off for a really long time, but they just
Hmm.
like converted and I don't remember what the term is, but they joined the stock market and became a private company or something like that. So and my role was supposed to be directly in the, like, crux of that, and it would have been a great experience, but also extremely stressful. So I'm kinda happy that
Yeah.
I never heard back from them, but that's the sort of, not hearing back is very much the vibe these days, I find. It's
Hmm.
daunting, and, like, it's so much of, like, corporate America right now, especially, like, I work in big tech, and big tech is, like getting into big tech is very, very tough to actually, like, get into Meta or Google or Netflix, like, as a full-time worker is next to near impossible. Um When you're working for them, like, the way to get in is through third-party contractors, and my last job, I worked for a third-party contractor through a third-party contractor for Google. Like, I was 2 contracts removed from Google, but doing work for Google at, like, a third of what I should have been making working for Google, and that's, like, the reality of the job market and the job like what we're dealing with right now, and it's awful.
It is, and not to toot my own horn, is obviously being a career coach and help. I have seen and heard numerous stories where not, trying to apply for jobs, not hearing from anyone ever, or you're the fact that you were able to get a job through someone that you knew, um, and be there for 7 years. It really is. It's like the networking game. You really do need to know someone on the inside,
Yeah.
because that's what a lot of companies are now relying on. So it doesn't matter if you see a job that's great. It's more, do I know someone that's working there? Do
Yep.
I know someone that knows someone that's working there that can get me in, that they can push this through? And it's it's kind of frustrating, obviously. It's not kind of, it's very frustrating. And many, like, I happened to chat with someone the other day who works at a company. I actually, yesterday was his very first day at the job. And I said, oh, he goes, yeah, well, the job market kind of sucks, but I found this and I'll stick here for a bit. because I really don't really want to. I didn't really want this job, and I'm really getting tired of looking for jobs. So I'm glad I actually got at least an offer.
Yeah,
I
and
was
I
like,
mean, I was in the same boat very recently. Like I said, I just put in a letter of resignation today, and that was following. I quit my last job, I quit because it was extremely toxic. It started out great for the first few months that I worked for Google on their AI training program. Like it was really wonderful and I loved it. And the teams were great. That we were all we I was on the super raider team is what we were called, and we were the last line of defense for Google's AI programs, doing evaluations for them and making sure that, the model was responding in the correct way and correcting any issues that they had. And so like I eventually became a lead on AI overviews is where I started, which is the AI that is on Google. When you actually use the search engine and there's the AI response that comes up, that's AI overviews. And that was around before Gemini was ever a thing. And before Gemini was also Bard. So I worked a little
okay.
bit on Bard, but mostly on AI overviews. And then I became a lead. And then once I became a lead, that was, I mean, I can go into a lot about that. But I eventually was asked to become the founding evaluation lead for the Gemini's training program. And so I don't remember again why I was talking about this. What was
You talked about, well, you're talking about toxicity in the workplace, or why you kind of left the.
Yes, thank you. That was it, was, why I left. So, like, the toxicity really started, around the time that I became a lead because there was one particular individual who was, someone who was helping me she was my pod lead. She was also, a task lead, and she was an advocate for me. But there was a lot of stuff that was going on with the other leads, and I became very privy to this, and am very I like to know what's going on. I like to know the gossip. I like to know what I'm getting myself into. So I eventually, before I became a lead, was able to piece together that this individual was basically trying to whisper in all of the leads' ears that the leads didn't like one another, that they didn't like one another, which was not true. Nobody was saying this. So that she would become the only trusted person among the leads. She was trying to basically be a
Wow.
puppet master. And I uncovered this just before becoming a lead. And so she went in thinking that I was going to be her, little puppet because she got me there. But she really didn't. I also found out later on down the line is that there was another lead that had advocated for me first, and my pod lead had jumped on top of it and saw an opportunity present itself and became my advocate only because she could gain something from it. And so this whole scenario blew up, and eventually I went to HR and had to advocate for her to not be my pod lead anymore, which led to her actually being asked to step down as pod lead. And because I had so much evidence against her, swearing in meetings, like doing a lot of toxic stuff. But that toxicity, even once it was gone, was sort of just stuck and it never left. Like it is so hard to extract that sort of corruption once it is imbued in the system. And leads are Google is toxic, let me tell you right now. Like Google is very toxic, and I think most corporate environments tend to be toxic in some way. And our team was pretty great. Like I really liked my team, and especially once this person was gone, I was, you know back with a core team that I really loved. But still, there was still this pervasive sort of like I don't know, negativity that was really hard to escape. We were ramping up nobody's business, with hiring hundreds of people at a time that were onboarding all at once. And that was really stressful to deal with. And then I moved to Gemini, and Gemini was like a complete refresh. And I had a brand new team. And we were all like, our team was so close knit and so tight, so fast. And we lasted like that the entire way through. I dealt with six extremely stressful crises while leading on the project that crisis occurred on. And a lot of that was very toxic, sort of Google mismanagement. And despite that, like I was still very happy for the most part at that job because of my team, because my team was so supportive. My like PAO, we called them like the head of our department. She was amazing. We called her mom, and we would have sassy which would just be like, or what was it? Sassy, yeah, it's sassy 15. It was our breaks. We would say
Oh, nice.
we were going on a sassy 15, and we had to like come up with a unique way of stating that we were going on our sassy 15. Like I wrote poems and stuff, and like it was fun. It was so much fun. And but then Gemini was eventually decommissioned. And when the project area collapsed, our team was disbanded and we were split up. I lost my lead position because there was no like other lead positions, and they found out that I speak fluent French. So I got moved to a team of like eight, literally eight, including the leads. And we were the foreign language department, just doing I mean, it was great as far as work experience goes, but it was very, very small. And I eventually became the only French individual who was like working the French tasks because they fired the other two. And that was very stressful for me because all of a sudden it was all on my shoulders. Everything that had to do with French to English or English to French was on me to deal with. And layoffs were, like, constant. It was just, like, we had a major ramp up, and then we had a major ramp down, and, I saw so many of my, like, closest, like, get fired, like and the methodology of firing is literally to just lock you out of your account without telling you that you are being fired, which is awful, and
Yeah.
so measures got more and more draconian as time went on. Our we had to like for we had to announce 30 days in advance that we were going on vacation. And this came at a time when I was planning on going on vacation to go visit my family. And I was unable to go because they enacted that before I had put in my, 2-week notice that I was going to home to visit my family. I still stuck through this. It wasn't until they docked my pay for missing a DM, and they didn't tell me. I went to clock out that day, and I saw that I was clocked in at 11 o'clock and my clock in at 8 o'clock. And I asked my pod lead about it, and my pod lead was like, well, you had missed a DM. And so you weren't available to work, obviously. So we decided that it was like within our right to take your pay. And I was like, that's actually illegal in my state, straight up illegal, but it wasn't even it's not worth fighting it because it was like $84, and to fight it would have cost significantly more and a lot of stress. And so I was like, I'm just going to leave it at that. But then we had a disciplinary meeting and they decided to put me on a PIP. And
Oh, no.
I was one of their best leads, hands down, no doubt about it. Ask anybody that ever worked for that company, and they will tell you I was exceptional. And I say that with, as much humility as I can, but like I know that I was exceptional. And for them to have put me on a PIP was such a slap in the face. I said, I will not sign your PIP. I will sign my letter of resignation instead. And I, at this time, had three interviews lined up for like six-figure positions in another company. And all three of those like interviews, that one of them was a creative writing job. And I was like, I'm a shoe-in for that. I killed the interview. The interviewer was like, you'll hear from your recruiter shortly. It was like her, send off note. And I was like, I got this job. Well, they had a hiring freeze. And then it was
Ooh.
two reorgs that killed two of them and a hiring freeze that killed the creative writing one.
Wow.
And that left me in a situation where I had 42 recruiters reach out to me through my LinkedIn in 3 months. And I
Wow.
interviewed so many times, and I heard back from almost none of them after the interview. And I ended up 4 months I spent without work. And,
Mm.
like, I mean, I had to, ask my parents to, and I'm lucky that I'm privileged enough to have parents who are able to cover my rent when I am, in that sort of situation. I have to pay them back. I'm not my mom expects me to pay her back as soon as I start to, make money again, which I hopefully will very soon. But, 4 months without a job was crushing. That really, and it was really unexpected. I thought I was, exiting my job with a plan. I thought I had sort of everything I was like, this is fine. I've got a job pretty much lined up, but I didn't. And I ended up having to take a job that I got through a bunch of my former direct reports had started to work for one of Google's competitors, and they one of them was a major advocate, I found out, for me. And the recruiter that he had worked for reached out to me. So again, who you know is very important. And that recruiter was like, I've had your resume sitting on my desk for a month now, and I just haven't had a position to put you in. And this role is he straight up said, this you're massively overqualified for this. It's only $20 an hour. But if you want it, you've got it. And so I took it because I had to. I had no other options, and it turned out to be the worst job I've ever worked in my life. I was literally it was awful. And I straight up the last week I no called, no showed because I was so just kind of miserable. And I hated it so much that I couldn't even like bear to log in because it was just killing my and the team was great, but the work was not, and everything is so tracked. They're watching you every second of the day. If you're away for more than 8 minutes, you get taken out of production and it gets counted against you. Your pay is determined by the actual amount of hours that you hit. So it was just rough. And so, yeah, toxicity in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've been there, right? The same way. Like, there's definitely a few jobs that I left because of that toxicity in the workplace. And I remember being asked one of the last jobs I had before I changed complete different industries. And they're like, "Well, why are you leaving?" I'm like, "You've created a unbelievable toxic work environment. And on top of that, you're putting us through the ringer and you don't pay
Mhm.
us well."
Yes.
So it'd be one thing if you actually stopped lining your pockets of your board members and actually gave us money, and then it might actually be worth maybe being treated horribly, but
Right.
it really isn't. And
Mhm.
so as long as you keep I flat out said to I was like, as long as you keep wanting to offer this horrible pay, you're going to keep getting the types of workers that you've now recently hired, and why those of us who are sick and tired of it are leaving because we
Mhm.
can't do it anymore. We we're learning too much that there's a light at the end of the tunnel to find something better. And so
Mhm.
we are going to find something better. And I mean, I still remember the next job that I had was what, $12 more an hour? It was something crazy. And I actually had less work to do, and yet I was making more money.
That's the situation that I'm in now, and that's also why I decided to just no call, no show for a week, because I got a job through there's actually AI, working in AI, especially on the, evaluation side of things, it's all through, third-party contractors, and there are a few of them that have established themselves that are, they're just these massive firms for, they're called vendors that are there, working taking contracts from the big tech industry and then distributing them out and finding the workers for them. One of them is called Mercor. And I will say that so far my experience with Mercor has been phenomenal. They are referral based. So you have to have a referral to even get in there. So again, who you know is very important. And I got an AI like red teaming role, which is like actually adversarially prompting AI to break them, to try to get past their safety guidelines in order to expose security vulnerabilities. And they somehow realized, like, I had applied a bunch of times through for a bunch of different contracts through them. They had somehow like I had gotten like French ones that I had gotten like rejected from. And then I had started to fill out this AI adversarial prompting role, and I didn't finish the contract. And I received an email from one of them, like somebody high up at Mercor, who was like, "We think you should finish this application because you seem like, based on your resume, you'd be really good for this." And I was like, "Really? Like, what in my resume even like gives them the impression that I'm good at adversarial prompting?" I now have figured it out, but finished it. I did not get that role, but they reached out a couple days later and were like, "Actually, so we're offering you a job offer, like, without even applying." I didn't apply to this contract. They just immediately, like, gave it to me, and it was for $64 an hour, which was 3 times, like, more than 3 times what I was making at Meta, and I was like, like, "What? That's insane." And so I have the same experience, like, where it just kind of it might take some time, and it might take some, you know, like, going through some really troubling times. Like, I swear it was like saying that I kept saying telling myself, "I'm in my hero's journey, and I'm at that point where I'm hitting my lowest low. This is my rock bottom, and I'm just waiting for that moment where I'm gonna skyrocket to the top." Like, and that's what I was sort of banking on, was really just finding, like, that right fit in that right moment, and it's like I mean, of course, the, project has been paused since I finally got my background check done, but it's supposed to be a long-term contract for a year, so, um, once it does kick off again, I'm gonna be, in a really good place, and I am, you know it's also allowing me to, like I can work whenever I want, which is really nice. There's no set hours. You can work a minimum of 5 up to 40 hours a week. Like, it's so flexible, and that's really amazing for me too. I really like that flexibility. I like working from home. I've worked from home for, God, 12 years now, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, that does make it easier, I will say, to be your authentic self, I would say, versus being in an office makes it harder because there are, you know, like, the being in person, like, adds just a lot more elements that you have to be aware of and be wary of, like, just like, "Did I wear deodorant today?"
I mean, it's funny that you even say that because I know there were definitely a few times that I realized I came into work and I was like,
Oh, I got
that's
talked to
not
by a manager once, when I was working at the bank because, like, if I get embarrassed, like, I just kind of I, like, have that skunk, sort of like instinct or whatever, like, my pheromones just release, there's nothing I can do about it, like, I want everyone away from me, so, like, my body just lets you know that, and it doesn't matter what deodorant I'm wearing, like, I'm just going to, like, it's not pleasant. And I got talked to once because somebody did really embarrass me. I'm a client while I worked at the bank that day, a particularly difficult client to work with. And somebody complained, and I had to go sit in front of my manager and like listen to her talk about like how sticky my armpits were. And that was toxic. That was definitely toxic in multiple ways.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's talk about the pieces of us that don't fit the workplace approved version of professional.
Mhm.
So, how do you think about self expression when the majority labels it too much, too weird, too queer, or too something?
Well, I would say that's more of a they problem than a, like, you problem.
I agree.
Definitely. Just in the if that's sort of the wording that they're using, especially to address any sort of discomfort that they might have, like, That's highly problematic. Much better ways to state that are still supportive. And like you can indicate to somebody that like maybe this isn't the place where like the level at which you are operating is appropriate, for instance. And even that could be better. Like that was very off the cuff, but that could be substantially better in the way that it's worded. And I think that that's really like important is just wording. The way that you state something is it changes everything. So I do not approve. As a wordsmith, I don't approve at all of that manner of addressing anybody about anything. It's just straight up mean. It's adversarial and it's wrong.
So let's talk about reinvention after disruption and refusing professional grief performance. You said you can speak candidly. Obviously, you exited a high toxic culture um, in the face of depression, even with financial impact. What did that exit teach you about integrity and boundaries?
Well, I think that that exit was what I said when I exited. I wrote a really powerful LinkedIn post on my exit, and I don't remember the specifics of what I said in there, but I know that one of the core principles was that I left having my dignity intact because that was what they were trying to take away from me with that bit was my dignity. And I was not going to let that happen. And I knew my value, I knew my worth. I knew that I had done so much for that company. I had made them so much money and for them to have sort of stabbed me in the back like this, like twice in a row was something that I wouldn't tolerate. I absolutely could not tolerate that. And, you know, I was pretty depressed by this point too. Like even my mom was supportive of me leaving because my mom was like, "You're not yourself." And I think that that's really important to be aware of is, you know, because I really wasn't that aware of it. It's so easy for that sort of complacency. For me, it's often complacency is where it starts. Once I'm complacent, it's very easy for me to slip into depression because I
Mhm.
just need constant change. And that's, I thrive in change. I thrive in chaos. Not everybody's like that, but I think that everybody has a sort of space where they become complacent. And then I think the slippery slope is there for everyone to sort of fall into that like stasis and stagnate. And stagnation is depressing. Like, especially if you're dealing with the toxicity on top of that, like it's very easy to fall into sort of a depressive state and not even realize it. And so, like, the disruption was really impactful because it sort of woke me up. Once I was out of it, I was like it took me still some time because I obviously had to process leaving. I was dealing with, like, personal issues that were, like, really like, my best friend stabbed me in the back and completely exited my life for stupid reasons, and I still am not over it, but, like, that was 4 days before I left my job, and
Wow.
so all of that sort of compounded into this like I mean, it just like sent me spiraling. And but once I like was able to sort of get myself out of that and process and realize like, you know, that he was treating me terribly all along and that so was my job. Slowly I began to, you know, get back that sense of like my own worth and my own dignity and my own like value and become an even better version of myself through that through that realization and realize like the fact that I no called no showed, like normally I would say that's really bad. You should never do that. But sometimes there are situations where no call no showing is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
If your mental health is suffering, like, you know, I never thought I would ever no call no show, but my mental health was suffering and I was like, no, no more. I'm done letting my mental health suffer for $20 an hour. I'm just done with that. So I think that that's something that like really I took away from that experience is like learning where my boundaries lie, learning my limits, and learning where I can just be like, hey, with you.
Well, and you made a really good point because number one, yeah, um, your mental health is so important. If you're anything that you're doing in the work environment is pulling you down and you're probably not going to be sleeping well. You're going to probably be snippy with friends or family. And when you get to that point, it really is time to get out of that situation because
Yeah.
it's not good for you. And it's hard. And this is a great follow-up question. I'm so good that I got this. So for someone who knows that they need to leave, that but they feel that they're trapped by money, fear, or identity, what do you say to them in this type of situation?
It's very, very tricky and very, very hard because, like, especially financially, I completely understand. Like I said, I'm lucky that I have my parents to fall back on. But even then, like, it's not like I like to, and it's not like it costs me something to even ask my parents for that help. And so, like, for somebody who doesn't have that safety net, like, I can't actually even imagine, like, I can't imagine
Yeah.
what I would do in that situation. And I don't feel that I can even say, like, what to do because I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I would probably stay because the alternative is potentially losing your housing. Like, that's worse than dealing with a
Yeah.
toxic job. And that puts you, and if you're in that situation, I'm like so sorry.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's rough because I've been there. I was kind of like you that I've had family that can help, that can support, that could be there when I needed that support. And but when you're there, I mean, I remember being at a job where I was at a time where I had the support, but they were kind of like, just stick with it. Just try to stick with it a little bit longer. And it was at a time where it was back in 2008. Everything was going to crap. I was in a company that was awful, but I stuck it out until things finally turned and then I got out. I was like, I got to get out. It was a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I knew that in the end, it was funny because it was one of the few jobs that I've had where I had a true exit interview and they asked me why I was leaving.
Oh, I forgot
And
about exit interviews. I have had one of those.
but I pretty much said I can't do this anymore. Like it's too toxic. You guys created a horrible work environment for my team and my department and you let go. I mean, I flat out told them you let go one of the best bosses I ever had just because she was tough. And the funny thing is our team was stronger with that person. She was amazing. She was scary as all get out, but she was amazing and we worked hard and yet we played hard. But when she got pushed out of our team into a completely different part of the company and then eventually let go, we were like, yeah, you guys messed up. But yeah, it's rough because unfortunately there aren't a lot of people that are in situations that they can get assistance from potential family
Right.
or friends or whoever made it because so many people especially in this time are really struggling
Mhm.
because everything has gone up.
Right.
Prices of everything have gone up. Oh, but what? I'm sorry. We have the best economy and everything's great. Liar to that butthead in charge. That is a lie.
That
But
is horrible.
it's just, yeah, it's hard. But when you can get to me personally, when you can surround yourself with those are going to be able to help and support you, and not support in like I would say maybe not necessarily financially, but like a consoling,
Emotional.
like emotional support, or someone who, like a friend you can lean on, or just be able to vent to, or whatever it might be. that's going to help a little bit. That's going to get you into a place where it's maybe get you in a little bit better position. Because I've had, gosh, I've had so many toxic work environments the more I think about it. But I mean, I even had one at one point early on in my career where I had some friend of mine slash roommate who actually couldn't talk to me because I was so stressed in the work environment that when they did this mass layoff and I ended up getting let go, I was, when they said I got let go, I was like, awesome. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, I got, sorry, I had to, I have to get out of this shithole because you have caused so much stress. When I have friends and family that can't even talk to me because I am so stressed, like I ended up, I think my next job was a server in a restaurant. But you know what? I didn't care. It was a job that I wasn't having to deal with that crap from day in
Mhm.
and day out. And they made it a horrible working environment. And they know they did that. And it was just like, yeah, we can't do that. I can't do this anymore. So when they, now eventually, obviously, I got a better job down the road, but it, it was rough. I mean, it's not a good sign when the people that your friends and family, or, you know, whatever family that might be, can't even hang around you because you're
Right.
so
Mhm.
and no one, and I mean literally no one should ever be in that situation. You really got to question companies when they put employees in that type of situation,
Yeah, and I feel like it's more and more common that they are putting us in that situation,
which
unfortunately.
is funny that there are so many young folks, especially Gen Zers, that are wanting to do their own thing and
Mhm.
be like more entrepreneurial and not working for these big companies. I mean, it's because, I mean, really, it's, and I get it. I
Mhm.
100% get it after seeing it for the decades. It's like, well, yeah, why would you want to go and work for a company?
Right.
Because they're not making it fun. Because it's funny, because I remember decades ago that, and it's funny you brought it up, Google was like the place to go and work because they
It was.
supposedly were, and they're like, oh yeah, you should go and work for them. And then even at one point, you know, I have a family member who worked for Disney and they're like, oh, that'd be a fun place to work. And then it wasn't.
Mhm.
It became
Yep.
awful place to work. So, and Disney did that to themselves, by the way, when they
Google did it.
started becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and they just made it awful. Anyway, so systems that aren't and weren't built for us, meaning the queer community. And the moment refusal becomes health, a lot of LGBTQ folks become expert self architects, building our own structures inside systems that don't hold us. When do you think making it work stops being resilience and starts being harm?
I think, like we just talked about, once you are either your support system is indicating to you that you are reacting in such a way that is like difficult for them, once they're sort of, if they're not the type who are usually like pushing back against you or something and they start pushing it back against you, you should probably listen. It's sometimes hard in those moments to do so, but it's, they're probably trying to tell you something. And also, if you start to realize that you are, you know, depressed or angry or just feeling a constant negativity in your life because of somebody or something, regardless of what it is, if it's your job or if it's like a relationship or if it's like, you know, a friend, like, then you probably are, should look at cutting that entity out of your life, because honestly, if it's not serving you, why keep it around? Like, it's like RuPaul says, if you're not paying my bills, wait, how does it go? Why am I forgetting this?
Oh, I can't even remember. But
Why am I forgetting this?
you make you made a really good point. It's like if it's not benefiting me, why am I still doing this? Why am I going to keep putting myself through this? And it's, I think the more and the more that people, especially in our community, learn that and learn where the better places to work, to live, even to surround yourself with, the better will become personally. So
Unless they paying
All
your
right.
bills, pay them bitches no mind. I got it.
All right. So we've had some intense conversation, but we're going to have some fun. One of the things I love about this, what I do with this podcast, is I ask all of my guests kind of silly, sometimes definitely not thought provoking by any means, just fun, rapid fire, like quick questions.
Okay.
So these are intended to be whatever comes to mind first. You don't have to think about it really deeply. Just, yeah, whatever comes out first.
Right.
And so I mean, I will make the dead air sit there. So if you do take a long time, I won't edit that out. Just kidding. Actually, AI takes it out. So I when I'm
Oh, that's
doing
nice.
my post production. Anyway, so if your leadership style were a movie genre, what would it be?
Oh my god. It would be a, like, combo of it would definitely be somewhat of a comedy, but it would also be, like it would be like a cerebral comedy. It would be a dark comedy.
Nice.
Yes.
I like that. I like that a lot,
Cult
actually.
classic dark comedy would be like Donnie
Awesome.
Darko, which isn't a
Awesome.
comedy, but it's got its comedic moments. A little bit
All
funny.
right. I like that. So, what's your most Ryan ritual when you need to reset your nervous system?
My most Ryan ritual is probably to shower. Is like I do a lot of like getting over things in the shower. I love a hot shower. And then like usually devoting myself to my own personal projects. I've got quite a few of them on like that I'm working on right now. And some of them are just for fun. And some of them are actually like I'm trying to build my own company out of. But I would say actually one of the biggest ones for me is DJing, mixing music. That is one that I do not monetize, and I have no plan to monetize. I am, like, pretty good at it, and I use my narrative background to develop sets that are very story driven and very emotionally charged, and so I'm able to get a lot of my emotional, like, feelings out through mixing music and creating some sort of journey that I would take listeners on. And I don't care how many listens I get. I don't care about, any of that. Like that is what's just for me. And so that's a big one for me.
I like that. All right. What's one phrase that you would delete from corporate vocabulary forever?
Uh mm, Pivot's the first word that came to mind, but actually I kind of like pivots. I thrive in pivots. So I think a lot of people want to get rid of pivots, but oh god, does no lunch break count? Cuz that one really like irks me. The unpaid lunch breaks really grind my gear.
Uh, I get that. Yeah, I can see. Yeah. All right. So, Ryan, if someone listening feels like they're editing themselves to survive at work, what's one small action that they can take this week to reclaim a little bit more of who they are?
I would say like infuse your interactions with just one additional small minor detail that indicates a little bit more of who you are. That could be something as simple as an emoji. Like Google, we were able to use custom emojis. Meta actually allowed us to upload our own images that were made into emojis. And so
Cool.
I one of like, I never came out at work really. I used a heart that was a rainbow heart, and I liked every single message that was put out there instead of giving the thumbs up like everybody else. I put my rainbow heart, and that was one of the, like I became known for that rainbow hearts, and it can be as subtle as that, it can be as small as that, and, like, that can make a lot of difference. So, anywhere where you can just kind of, like, insert just a little bit more of who you are and just look for those opportunities.
I like that. All right. Well, Ryan, I want to thank you so much. This was such a powerful conversation because you didn't just talk about authenticity like it was a slogan. You talked about it like it was a craft, visibility with intention, narrative with backbone, and self expression with boundaries. So if you're listening and you've been trying to survive inside of a system that keeps asking you to edit yourself, let this be a reminder you don't have to perform your grief. You don't have to shrink your weird, and you don't have to confuse self abandonment with professionalism. Ryan, thank you for bringing your honesty, your clarity to the show today.
It was my pleasure. I had a great time being here. And let me just say, if you are looking for a job, if you are struggling through the job market, I am putting a book out there shortly that is called The New Meta, an epic quest to quash the chaos of today's bizarro job bazaar. And it's all gamified and it's all video game themed. And honestly, like, I don't know if my contact info goes anywhere here, but like, reach out to me. I am more than I've been through it and I've learned a lot about the job market right now. So I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can.
Oh, for sure. We'll definitely have your info in the show notes for everyone. So, everyone listening, if this episode hit something tender or true for you, share it with a friend who's rebuilding right now. And if you want support turning your visibility into agency and building a career that actually fits who you are, come connect with me. That's what I do. And so I coach with purpose and confidence in the work environment. So until next time, stay empowered and stay out.